The Galactic Summit was being held as a demonstration of civilizational superiority. Every major power in known space was sending their greatest warrior, their most elite combatant, their most skilled fighter to a neutral arena to compete in single combat. The winner would be determined through direct physical competition, and the victor civilization would be declared the most powerful in the galaxy. It was a barbaric system by some standards, but it was a system that the galaxy's militaristic powers had agreed upon, and it gave them a way to determine dominance without full-scale warfare. The civilizations began arriving with their champions. The Dven sent their greatest warrior, a being that had won 847 consecutive battles, that had defeated opponents with superhuman strength and speed. The warrior was 7 meters tall, with armor that had been forged from materials that could withstand nuclear-level impacts. The Soraeth Collective sent their elite assassin, a being trained in 23 different methods of lethal combat, capable of killing opponents in microseconds, with reflexes that exceeded biological possibility. The Coalition of Ancient Worlds sent their military prodigy, a fighter whose tactical understanding exceeded even artificial intelligence, who could predict opponent moves 3 steps in advance and adjust accordingly. Species after species arrived with their champions. Each champion was elite, trained from birth, modified genetically, enhanced technologically, optimized for combat. Each champion represented the pinnacle of their civilization's martial achievement. And humanity sent a Janitor. The human selection process for the champion had been conducted in complete secrecy. The Conclave had been informed that humanity would participate in the summit, that humanity would send a representative to compete. The human government had made no further announcement about who that representative would be. So when a single human appeared at the arena, unremarkable in appearance, wearing casual clothing, carrying a mop, the galactic community assumed there had been an error. Commander Alexandra Park, who was overseeing the human participation, was asked directly, "Where is humanity's champion? Is this being a support staff member? Has there been a clerical error in the registration?" Park's response was simple: "This is humanity's champion. This is who we have sent to represent our civilization." The being she was introducing was named Marcus Chen. He was a 67-year-old human male who had spent the last 40 years working as a maintenance technician on various space stations. He had no combat training. He had no genetic modifications. He had no weapons. He had a mop, a bucket, and an extraordinarily calm demeanor. The galactic community reacted with laughter. The Dven warrior mocked the selection. The Soraeth assassin questioned whether this was an insult. The coalition commander wondered whether humanity was attempting comedy. Only Commander Park remained calm. "The competition begins in 1 hour," she said. "Marcus Chen will participate." The first match was between the Dven warrior and Marcus Chen. The arena filled with spectators from across known space. Billions of beings watched through broadcast feeds. Every civilization was eager to see how this would unfold. The Dven warrior entered the arena with weapons and armor. Marcus Chen entered the arena with his mop. The referee signaled the match to begin. The Dven warrior charged at Marcus Chen with speed and ferocity. The warrior was attempting to end the competition in seconds through overwhelming force. Marcus Chen did something unexpected. He began to clean the arena floor. While the Dven warrior was charging at him, Marcus was pushing his mop across the arena in methodical strokes. The warrior's approach path suddenly became slippery with soapy water. The warrior's footing became unstable. The warrior fell. While the warrior was on the ground, Marcus continued mopping. He methodically cleaned the area around the warrior, ensuring that any attempt to stand would result in further instability. The Dven warrior attempted to rise multiple times. Each time, the slippery floor caused them to slip back down. The warrior, for all their strength and training, could not find purchase on a wet floor. After 18 minutes, the Dven warrior conceded. They had not been defeated through combat. They had been defeated through practical ingenuity. The galactic community erupted in shock. The second match, the Soraeth assassin faced Marcus Chen in the second round. The assassin was confident. The assassin had trained for 200 years in lethal combat. A janitor would be trivial. The assassin began their attack with superhuman speed, moving in patterns that should have been impossible to track. Marcus Chen, moving with the deliberate slowness of someone who was not attempting to be fast, simply turned on the cleaning machines he had positioned in the arena. Industrial-strength vacuum systems, air circulation systems, dust suppression equipment. The Soraeth's enhanced sensors, which depended on precise sensory input, became overwhelmed by the environmental noise and dust particles in the air. The assassin's ability to track and move became disrupted by the changed atmospheric conditions. Marcus continued his cleaning, methodically working through the arena. The Soraeth, unable to operate effectively in the contaminated environment, eventually simply sat down and withdrew from the competition. They had not been defeated through combat. They had been defeated through environmental manipulation. The realization by the time Marcus faced the coalition commander in the third round, the galactic community had begun to understand what was occurring. Humanity had not sent an untrained civilian as a joke. Humanity had sent someone who understood that combat was not about martial skill or physical superiority. Combat was about understanding your environment and using it to your advantage. Marcus Chen was not a warrior. Marcus Chen was a problem solver. The coalition commander, recognizing this, took a different approach. Rather than attempting direct combat, the commander attempted to negotiate. "What do you want?" the commander asked. "To finish my shift," Marcus replied, continuing to sweep the arena floor. "Your shift. I have a job to do here. Maintain the arena. Keep it clean. That's my responsibility. That's what I'm doing." The coalition commander, faced with an opponent who was simply doing their job rather than attempting to fight, found no way to engage. You cannot defeat someone who is not competing. You cannot overcome someone whose motivation is not victory but simply completing their work. The commander withdrew. Marcus Chen was declared the winner of the Galactic Summit. The galactic response across the galaxy was not to celebrate human victory. It was to attempt to understand what had occurred. Military analysts reviewed the matches and found no evidence of conventional combat. Historians examined Marcus Chen's background and found no indication of strategic training. Scientists studied the arena conditions and found nothing unusual about the environmental factors. What the galactic community gradually recognized was that Marcus Chen had defeated every opponent not through superior martial skill, but through superior understanding of problem solving. When faced with the Dven warrior strength, Marcus had used physics against them. When faced with the Soraeth assassin speed, Marcus had used environmental disruption against them. When faced with the coalition commander's tactical brilliance, Marcus had refused to engage in tactics at all. The philosophical implication, the victory of a janitor over the galaxy's greatest warriors, triggered a profound philosophical reconsideration. What did it mean that the universe's most accomplished fighters had been defeated by someone who had spent 40 years cleaning floors? What did it suggest about what true strength actually was? What did it demonstrate about the difference between martial skill and practical wisdom? The answers that emerged suggested something that the galaxy had not anticipated. Martial skill was specialized. It was optimized for specific types of combat against specific types of opponents. Practical wisdom was general. It could be applied to any situation. A warrior trained for 200 years in lethal combat knew exactly how to kill. A janitor who had spent 40 years solving practical problems knew how to apply resources and understanding to any situation. The warrior was specialized. The janitor was adaptive. Marcus Chen's perspective after his victory. Marcus Chen was invited to speak to the conclave assembly about his approach to the competition. His explanation was characteristically simple. "I was hired to clean an arena. That was my job. I was told there would be a competition. I assumed my job was to maintain the arena throughout the competition. So that's what I did." The assembly waited for more explanation. Marcus continued. "The warriors came expecting combat. They expected my role to be to fight them. But my role was to clean. So I cleaned. And in cleaning, I made conditions where their training became less effective." He paused. "I didn't defeat them through superior combat skill. I defeated them by doing my job well. By understanding my environment. By understanding that sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution." Marcus looked around the assembly. "Your champions were trained to be warriors. I was trained to be practical. The competition didn't measure combat skill. It measured adaptability. And adaptability beats specialization." The cultural shift, the victory of the janitor over the galaxy's greatest warriors, triggered a cultural shift across galactic civilization. Species that had invested millennia in developing elite martial forces suddenly began to question that investment. If a practical worker could defeat the most trained warriors, what was the actual value of martial training? Military academies began to reorganize their curricula to include practical problem-solving alongside combat training. Elite warriors began studying under humans to understand how to apply their specialized skills in more general contexts. The galaxy began a slow transformation from a civilization based on military specialization toward a civilization based on practical adaptability. The unexpected recognition 5 years after the summit, Marcus Chen was offered a position on the Conclave Council. The position was offered not because humans needed representation, but because Marcus Chen represented something that the Conclave needed: the perspective of someone whose entire career had been devoted to practical problem-solving rather than political maneuvering. Marcus accepted, with one condition: he would continue working as a janitor. Cleaning keeps me grounded, he explained. It reminds me that the most important work is often the work that everyone overlooks. If I'm going to be on the Conclave Council, I need to remember that the clearest insights often come from those doing the work that others ignore. The deeper understanding years after the summit, a young scholar was studying Marcus Chen's victory and asked him a question. Did you win the summit through a special technique? Through training that you had received but kept secret? Marcus considered the question carefully. No. I won through paying attention. I won through doing my job well. I won through understanding that every situation has a simple solution if you look carefully enough. He paused. Your champions had been trained their entire lives to fight. They had forgotten how to see the practical solution. They saw a warrior and expected to fight a warrior. I was just a janitor doing my job. The legacy 100 years after the summit, a monument was constructed in the arena where Marcus Chen had won. The monument was not dedicated to military achievement or combat prowess. It was dedicated to practical wisdom. The inscription read, "Here, a janitor defeated the galaxy's greatest warriors not through combat skill, but through understanding that true strength is not specialized martial ability, but the ability to adapt, to observe, to apply practical wisdom to unexpected situations." This monument commemorates the moment when the galaxy learned that the most powerful beings are not those trained for combat, but those trained to solve problems. The philosophical transformation 200 years after the summit, the entire galactic approach to conflict resolution had been transformed. Military competition was replaced with problem-solving competitions. Elite warriors were replaced with practical specialists. The emphasis shifted from martial achievement to practical innovation. The Dven, the Soraeth, the Coalition, all the great military powers, found themselves reorganizing around principles that Marcus Chen had demonstrated, that practical wisdom exceeded martial skill, that adaptability exceeded specialization, that problem-solving exceeded combat. The galaxy had learned, through the humility of watching its greatest warriors defeated by a janitor, that strength came not from martial training but from practical wisdom. Marcus Chen's final reflection in his final address to the conclave before retirement, Marcus Chen reflected on what his victory had taught the galaxy. I was a janitor for 40 years. Every day, I cleaned floors, maintained facilities, solved practical problems. I was not considered important. My work was not valued by those pursuing military advancement or political power. He paused. Then I was asked to represent humanity in a competition against the galaxy's greatest warriors. I went to the arena with my mop, because that was my job. And I cleaned. And in cleaning, I defeated every opponent without raising my hand in violence. Marcus looked directly at those who would come after him. The galaxy learned from my victory something crucial, that true strength is not martial skill. True strength is the ability to understand your situation and apply practical wisdom. True strength is the ability to do your job well, even when that job seems insignificant. He concluded with words that would echo through galactic history. The greatest achievement is not military victory. The greatest achievement is recognizing that the simplest solution is often the most powerful solution. And the greatest power is not the power to destroy, but the power to improve, to maintain, to sustain what others have built.